And today, Larry and I are here with Jeremy Clos. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you all.
Good to see you too.
Even if it's just this way. But
I know. This is like my life now, though.
I know.
Nice bookshelf.
Right. Thanks.
Right. I know. And now when you see somebody in person, you're like, whoa, a body. So thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you today. Can you tell us, I know that you used to act, so can you tell us about that? When did you get the first acting bug, and how did you kind of maneuver to what you do now?
Okay, sure, yeah. So my dad was really big into community theater when I was a kid. So you and I used to work together at RLT, and it was founded in 36. And my dad actually was with a company that was founded in 37. And so it is also one of the oldest companies that's still operating. It's up in northern Kentucky, and they have this old 19th century opera house that they get to perform in, and 3 balconies and 2 sub-basements and all that sort of fun stuff. And at the age of 4, I got stuck on the stage as one of Rabbit's friends and relations in the house at Pooh Corner at this community theater. It was adorable. I was a lamb. And so I remember this very well. I was very young, but I was very impressionable about that whole experience, and it sort of just stuck. And so I did a lot more things with that company. I was the boy in the Velveteen Rabbit and some other things. And then, when I got to high school, my high school didn't have a drama club, and I insisted that we have a drama club. And so I sort of browbeat people into having a drama club. And so I played Marley in A Christmas Carol, and some other stuff there. But after I sort of graduated high school, I sort of left the acting behind. I went to school originally studying theater arts education. And so while I was in university and doing some of that stuff, I taught youth theater classes. And so I was doing everything. Like I was making the programs and, directing the show and doing the costumes and all of that. And so I walked into Raleigh Creative Costumes on St. Mary's Street back, the early 90s, and met Doug Hawes, and absolutely was just enchanted. If you didn't know Doug was this very genteel, old Raleigh lady who was very soft-spoken and had this acerbic wit. She was incredibly talented as a costumer. And so while I was at Appalachian, I needed to do some lab hours and for costuming. And so I asked Doug, would she supervise me rather than working in the shop at school? And I would come down to Raleigh and work with her. And she did. She readily agreed to that. And so it's just sort of stuck after that. I mean, she really took me under her wing. I did that program. She sort of supervised me costuming my first show ever, which was, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So right into it. And then I went to work for her after I was finished. And I stayed there for a long time. It was very neat. I learned a lot from her. And so then she was very supportive. I struck out on my own and opened my own costume shop. A lot more focused on the internet than hers was. And I was creating more collections and doing more design work and things. But she had very much transitioned to retail, Halloween costume kind of stuff. She had a big rental inventory for stage costumes at that point. And, I did that for 15 years. And then I just got to the point I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I transitioned to something else and ended up at RLT, which was really great. So.
That is hysterical. I had no idea. I mean, I knew you worked there, but I had no idea so would you call her a mentor then?
Oh, absolutely. I probably learned more about costuming from her in a practical sense than any book ever taught me. I mean, and it was always her way of doing things, to the point where my vocabulary and Jenny's vocabulary in the RLT costume shop, they don't really line up. We used to talk around each other all the time. Like, I'd be like, a trumpet skirt. She'd be like, you mean a tulip skirt? I'm like, no, I mean a trumpet skirt. And it would be, because that's what Doug had called it. And so, she had different names for different things. Of course, she had gone to Richmond Polytechnic Institute, I think it's what it was called, back in the 40s. And so fashion had different terms back then. Right. And so I was really picking up on this earlier sort of stuff. But anyway, the long and the short is that, yes, absolutely. I mean, she is absolutely responsible for my career.
I was going to ask you a question. I have some strong memories of the first time I was on stage in first grade, and I would absolutely love to go back to that school and step on that stage that I did more than 50 years ago and feel and see how it feels. Do you have that same desire too, where you at 4 years old you just love to get on that stage?
Well, I absolutely loved that opera house. It's called the Washington Opera House. It's in this town called Maysville, Kentucky. It's on the Ohio River, and it's a day's barge travel from Pittsburgh to Maysville. So it's where the barges would put in the 19th century, and everybody would come on their way to New Orleans. So you would leave Pittsburgh and you would sail down the Ohio, meet up with the Mississippi, and go all the way to New Orleans. And so this town was the first stop. And so it had all of these entertainments that people could have. So that's why the Opera House existed there. And so it was, reputed, as all theaters are, to be haunted, and I was just fascinated with it. And I just really fell in love with it. Now, when I was acting there in the 70s, when I was first on stage, it had no air conditioning. It had never been brought up to, modern conveniences in terms of like central air. And so it was horrific to act under stage lights on that stage. Now, since it's had millions of dollars in renovations, and it's really great. And I got to visit it again in 2012. I was up visiting some family in the area. They happened to have a show on stage. And so I went and bought a ticket. I called them and bought a ticket, and I showed up at the box office, and the lady said, "Hi, Jeremy, here's your ticket." And I was like, now anyway, I don't know how they put two and two together, but it was really neat. So I did get to go home again. That was really
That's great.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Have you ever gotten any great advice, whether it be from Doug or anyone, about your career?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that two things really that Doug taught me that have nothing to specifically do with like costuming in a sense, but like were great life lessons, was that one, she would not allow her employees to be abused. And so she would very much take a stand. I watched her throw person after person out of the shop on their ear for using curse words with her staff. I mean, she would literally walk out of her office and be like, "You're done, out." And so it was, and so when I had my own shop, I really sort of adopted that. I'm not going to put up with being abused. And the other thing that Doug really taught me was that, everybody doesn't have to like you. So, I was, young, and I was trying to make everybody happy all the time. And she's like, everybody doesn't have to like you. It's okay. And so I really got a little bit more comfortable with that. I mean, I still want to be good to people and things like that, but if somebody and I just don't mesh, it does not tear me up inside the way it used to. So she was really astounding, like, to work for. We would be given books that had nothing to do with costuming, and she would say, "Go home and read this so we can talk about it." And I remember one summer, she was touring Europe, and she had left the shop sort of in the hands of the mice, and we were all trying to keep the shop running. And I got a postcard from her that had some images on the front, and it said, "I thought you'd want to know more about these." No information about what it was. And so I knew that by the time she got back, we were going to talk about these things, and I needed to do some research and figure it out. So it was just super challenging, but really fulfilling sort of mentor-mentee relationship. It was really great.
Wow.
Do you have a favorite theater or film actor or, person that you really admire?
Oh goodness, that's really hard, because I really don't get. I'm not a person who gets starstruck, and so I don't really sort of get knocked off my block about like meeting people. I really admire William Ivy Long and his costume design. I Julie Taymor, as a director and a costume designer. Oh my goodness! I mean, I want to grow up and be Julie Taymor. I mean, I'm astounded by the things that come out of her. But as actors, I'm really into sort of the great British actors. I love Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, and Derek Jacobi. Those people, I could watch them all day long.
I had my theater mentor actually worked with William Ivy Long, and if I remember correctly, his name was Bob Hazard. He taught he directed a couple of shows at RLT, and he and I became good friends. He passed away 13 years ago, but he actually told me that William Ivy Long started off as an actor, and they basically said, "Not for you," and they encouraged him to go into costumes and stuff.
Well, and what, 7 Tonys later, they were right, I guess.
Right.
So, yeah.
At least that's the story Bob Hazard used to tell me.
Wow. Jeremy, do you have a worst audition story, whether about you or anyone else, that you would like to share?
So I really never had a bad audition in terms of, I actually was cast in every show I ever auditioned for. And it was not a function of how great I was. It was a function of how small that community theater was. And so I really didn't have auditions sort of go awry. But I remember very specifically one summer when I was teaching youth theater. It was early 90s, 93, 94, something like that. And I had 8 to 14-year-olds, and we were casting them in a show that we would workshop and then get on stage at the end of the program. And every one of the young girls in that sang Tomorrow for their audition. And I was literally, by the 7th one, I'm sitting here like, please don't do that. And so next year there was a rule, right? No one is allowed to sing Tomorrow. If you sing Tomorrow, you're out. So that was a rough way.
Song.
Really?
Now, I mean,
I think Haskell directed Annie before I got to RLT, but there was the story where he didn't really like the show, so if anyone ever auditioned with that song, they were not going to get cast. So it was kind of the underlying, don't do that.
Don't do that. It's too much. It's too much, yeah.
What is the favorite show you've been involved with?
Oh, that's so hard, because it's usually the last one, and that would be Seussical with Kathleen, which was an incredible experience. But The Three Little Birds was one of my favorite shows to costume as well. That was a couple of years ago now at RLT, and it was really cool to dig into sort of the folklore and myth of Jamaica and sort of bring all of that into the costumes. But maybe my one thing that really stands out was Titus Andronicus with Bear Theater in 2005, and it was sort of this, before this became a thing with everybody, we did this sort of post-apocalyptic Rome, and it was a ton of fun. Carmen Manley directed that, and
I think Kathleen and I saw that together.
It was really great, yeah. So,
wow.
If you could pick any show to costume, they said, what show would you love to costume? What would it be?
So right now, I think I currently, I love to costume Shakespeare, and I've never gotten to do Much Ado About Nothing, and I would love to do Much Ado About Nothing. But there's another musical out there that, because I happen to love Elizabethan costuming, and so that's sort of my jam. And Something Rotten is like out there, like looming, like I have to get my hands on this show at some point. Some sort of Technicolor Elizabethan design would be really, really, really fun to do. So
I've seen that show twice, and I would see it again. It just makes me laugh every time. Well, Carmen actually directed Much Ado a very long time ago, and it was it was put on in a photography studio downtown Raleigh somewhere, and we had to like come in with the set pieces every night and then take them away. And but
that sounds like Carmen,
right? But she was in her costuming, she wanted everyone to look alike except for like an added piece if you needed it. So we all had, like, men or women, dress pants with like a white wife beater and then these black suspenders, and we all looked like that. And then somebody might have a hat or a coat or something like that on top. But it was a very fun show, so I do hope you get to costume that. Absolutely.
As I've gotten older, I just absolutely love costumes. I remember seeing Bridge over the Tennessee Williams play, over the river. No. Anyway, I just remember the woman coming out with beautiful. What?
I said I'm drawing a blank on that too. I can't remember.
You know what I'm talking about. This woman came out. She had the most beautiful sweater on. I went, oh my God, look how beautiful that sweater is. And I was just fixing on her sweater and stuff.
Right. I know as a costumer, you run into a lot of different types of people. What is the perfect type of actor that would be in a costume shop with you? What do you like hope that every actor does?
I just need somebody to be all in, right? Because sometimes I want to do wacky stuff. And so I really need people to be in a place to say yes. And like in Seussical, when we dyed Brenna's hair royal blue in order to get this Gertrude look going, I mean, she was all in, and that's what I always need. Benaiah Barnes was that way with Dr. Bird in Three Little Birds. He was just like, I'm in, whatever you need, just tell me what it is. And so anybody who's open to that and has that sort of fearless take, because they're going to be wearing part of that all week long at their job. And so it takes a little bit of fearlessness for them to lean into that. And I really appreciate it when they do that.
So what do you say when they say, well, this will make me look fat?
Well, I had a terrible experience one time about that. And I was mentoring a young designer from Greensboro College. And there was this moment, we were doing King Lear with Carmen. And so the young designer had designed this under sort of my tutelage, and we had done this whole Roman look for early Britain. And we were doing fittings, and we had one of the young teen girls in this beautiful long burgundy flowing toga. And my student looked at her and said, "Oh my gosh, you look huge in that. Hold on." And she walked out of the room to get a rope to tie around to sort of mold the toga to her body, because she was a slip of a thing, so it didn't really matter. But she had an eating disorder. And it triggered her, and so it created a lot of issues, and so we had, to go through a reconciliation process and that sort of thing. So usually, if somebody tells me they feel like they look fat, it's because they're not used to where their waist is. We don't wear our pants or anything, or skirts or anything on our waist. We wear them on our hip bones, and so when you pull it up over your tummy, for a lot of people, that's really unusual and really weird. And so you have to kind of just talk them through it and show them photographs of like, no, this is the way people looked in the 50s. I know it's not the way it looks today. Right. I know it's uncomfortable, but this is what we're really going for. And so what can we do to make you more comfortable, but it has to stay and sort of being worn in this, in this way. And a lot of times a sash or a wide belt will sort of smooth out that line and make people feel a lot more better.
Well, I know as an actor, like I just couldn't wait to get into costume, because then it wasn't me anymore. Like it was the full transition, and the weirder or the more different it was from what I would wear, the better, because then I could definitely not see myself at all. So it was magical.
And that's easier, I think, with period shows or fantastical shows. But when you're talking about something that is relatively modern dress, and you're costuming someone, as a character, then they're wearing clothes that are so similar to what they would wear out of their closet, and then that gets a lot more tricky. It's a lot easier to show them a silhouette of a crinoline dress from the 1860s and say, see, your hips are supposed to look that wide, and they're like, oh, okay. But if it's modern dress, it's really tricky. Yeah.
I have
and I always want people to feel like they look good on stage.
Yeah.
So I always want to work with people to make them feel comfortable as much as I can. So,
as actors, we always have great moments on stage, but from your profession, can you tell about some great moments you witnessed on stage or been involved with?
Oh my goodness. Well, a funny story that was just one of these, like, it got so real that it crossed the line, but it was beautiful, was during Titus Andronicus. And so there is the scene where Kieran and Demetrius rape Lavinia. And Carmen staged that in the pure dark. There were sounds of a scuffle and some muffled cries and that sort of thing. And so she staged it very, very intentionally and very, very cautiously. But when it's over, they have cut off Lavinia's hands and they've cut out her tongue so that she can neither write their names or speak their names. And so there's this great scene, and we had this moment where Claire Wagner was Lavinia, and she's up on a platform, and she's changed now into a duplicate costume that's all shredded and bloody, and now the sleeves are longer so that she's got ace bandages over her hands, so she's got bloody stumps. And her uncle is speaking to her like, why won't you talk to me? Why won't you talk to me? Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what's wrong. And Claire opens her mouth that she's been holding a mouthful of stage blood. And so she opens her mouth and blood just pours out of her mouth. And then in the audience, there's a thud where one of the audience members had fainted. And so it was so effective and so realistic. Of course, it was really horrific for the audience member. But that was just one of those moments where you're like, okay, we really overdid it here, but it was really, really effective. So.
Whoa. Oh my goodness.
Well, so that was amazing, but maybe not amazing in a great way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a story about something funny that went wrong with your costumes or with yourself on stage? Or
so two quick stories. So Bear Theater again, which I was at Bear Theater from 2005 to 2009, and I costumed every show they did. We did Romeo and Juliet, and Jesse Gephardt directed it. And it was his first show he was directing ever. And so he had staged this wonderful scene where Lord Capulet was maybe a little rougher with Juliet than we would normally see him be. And so he had Tara Pozzo by the hair, and he's dragging her across the floor. And so we're at first dress, and it's a sort of modern dress mixed look with some period costumes thrown in. And so I have Tara in this very slinky red long nightgown, and it just came right off of her as he pulled her across the stage, and it just slipped right off. And there's poor Tara, fortunately in a leotard, but Jesse turns around and looks at me with this look of abject horror, like, this cannot happen. And so we fixed it, we restaged it, and we were able to fix it. That's fine. The second story is that you ask any of the old Bear Theater crowd what Plan B means. It means doing the show with no pants. It's when things go wrong, you're doing the show with no pants. And it was during Hamlet, the play within a play. Tara Pozzo was involved in this again. I don't know why. It's always
it's her fault.
So one of the actors lifts Tara Pozzo up, sets her on his shoulder, and as the minute he lifts her up and sets her down, his pants fell right to his ankles. And so he's standing there in his boxer shorts with Tara on his shoulder. And so that's, I think, where we actually came up with this idea of Plan B, because the whole audience cracked up. And it's a very comedic scene that they're in the middle of. And so they thought that we had rigged his pants to fall down, but we in fact had not rigged his pants to fall down. It just happened. So.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. I think as a director, when I first started out, there were times I forgot to mention to the costumer some things, and then they'd put them in some kind of tight thing, and I'd say, "Oh, they do a cartwheel." Mm-hmm. Things you just don't know that. Oh, I have to let them know that.
Yeah, it's super important to me to always get into watch runs to sort of pick up on that kind of thing, because Carmen was a very physical director, as you well know, and we were doing Robin Hood for Carrie Players. She was directing, I was costuming it, and I show up at a rehearsal and I'm watching this run, and Carmen has seen all the sketches and all the women are in these long medieval gowns, and suddenly they're like crawling in and out between each other's legs, and I'm like, Carmen, no, no, we can't do this. So we were able to catch that early, thank heavens. But wow. That kind of stuff happens all the time. It's not just you. And we didn't have that problem with Susical, really.
No.
So I was doing a show at Theater in Park a few years ago, and I played like 12 different characters, and one of the characters was an Amish woman with a long black dress. Now, I didn't have to run on stage, but opening hour dress rehearsal, I was running to get in place, and that's when I realized you didn't have the leg spread to run, and I just boom backstage.
Wow.
Boom. Yeah.
Well, when I did the dining room with Haskell, we had this scene where my character was having an affair with the dad of another kid at the party, and I wanted to tell him something, and I lean across the table and I pull him by his tie, and at the first dress rehearsal it was a clip-on, and I just pulled the thing, and we had to stop because both of us were laughing so hard, and the costumer was like, no one told me that, it's quick changes, so he did it on purpose.
Right.
But too funny.
If you couldn't do costumes, what's something else you'd want to do in the theater?
Oh, in the theater. Wow. Well, I don't know. I don't know that I have a good answer for that, Larry. I'm pretty set in my ways at this point in costuming. If I weren't working in costuming, I would probably want to work with the church. But as far as in the theater, maybe some scenic design, although I have not stretched those muscles in. Rocks were soft, as my friend Laura Parker says, since I did that. That was back in prehistoric times, so it's been a long, long time for that. But I enjoyed that as well, and some of the some of the artificing of props is interesting as well. But really, it's been now 25 years of costume design, and it's really just where I'm stuck. I'm just stuck.
Nice.
If you could go back in time to your younger self when you first started doing theater arts, what advice would you tell yourself?
So the advice that I give to everyone else that says to me they want a career in theater is there something else you can do? Because if you can, do that. Not because theater is not a great profession, because it really is, but because it's hard and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of hours. And a lot of people get stage struck in terms of sort of as Joel Haas once said, the roar of the grease paint and the smell of the crowd, intentionally reversing those things. And so it's one of those things, I think you have to be really, really sure that it's the only thing that you have to do. There was a great cartoon in a magazine not too long ago, and it was a kid, and they were asking their parent for money to get something out of a vending machine, and the parent gave them $1, and then they see the kid at the vending machine, and the vending machine says theater degree, and the parents are like, no! So, I mean, it is a very fulfilling and rewarding profession, but I think I would tell myself then I would go back and tell myself, like, is there anything else you want to explore before you are 100% committed to this? Because it was sort of a winding path that just sort of led me to do this. It wasn't what I set out to do. I actually was going to go to school and be an English teacher. That was the very first thing. Like when I was senior in high school, I had a wonderful senior English teacher named Teresa Peary, and she just was so inspirational to me that I really wanted to be an English teacher. But I still had all this sort of theater stuff going on, and it just wouldn't let go. So it was just make sure that's what you want to do, and explore some other things. That's the advice I would give my young self. So.
But I think like people in the theater, no matter what they do in the theater, they can't not do it. You know, it's their passion. And so whenever anybody would say, oh, I had a rough week, you know, I worked like 45 hours, and I'd be like, 45? That's pretty good.
That's really great, right? Yeah. So that's like the idea too, is like, is there anything else you can do? Because if you can do that, is it really your passion? Because if it isn't, it's not for you, because it can be an 80-hour week or a 100-hour week easily. And you know, that's salaried usually, not hourly.
Right.
So, right.
I actually think that, because I used to, before the shutdown, I'd go to the gym at 4:30 in the morning, work all day, and then go to theater. And I actually believe that I peak at 8 o'clock at night during real life, because I'm so used to being, okay, this is when you have to be up and ready to go.
Right. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And it's sort of like, I've always, ever since university, I have been stuck on this sort of theater schedule, because Dove didn't open her shop until 10 in the morning. And so I have yet to be, you know, when I was in university, I worked a 5:30 a.m. in the morning job, for which I got up at, 4 o'clock in the morning and went in and did it, and was out usually by 11 in the morning. And so I could still do class and stuff like that. But ever since then, I am just not on that schedule. I am at my most creative after dinner, like you, Larry. That's when I'm going to do most of my sketching and drawing and all of that sort of stuff, is after dinner. Yeah. Or sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning. It just depends on like whether or not the it's got a hold of me at that moment. So,
well, it's funny, when I was in college, I decided my freshman year to join the crew team, and we rehearsed, we practiced on the Hudson River in the late afternoons, which was a beautiful time, and it was gorgeous. And then after about a month of that, the coach decided our practices really should be in the morning, I guess when the races would be, I don't know. And the practices became 7 a.m. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. Like, I'm going to be up at night, so I cannot do that. And I had to quit.
I have the utmost respect for those athletes, those people that can get up. Friends of mine in high school did it. My wife did it for a while. She figure skated. I would get up and do that before their day. Yeah. Right. That's the first thing that they would get up and do. That's not going to happen. No. I mean, that's not going to happen for me. If I can practice at midnight, then yeah, sure, maybe, but not 4:30 in the morning to swim before school or figure skate before school. It's not going to happen. Not for me. So.
What I don't know, when Kathleen came up with this question, I don't think we thought we'd be still discussing it in mid-July. What's the first thing you want to do after the virus is put aside and we can have a normal life? And
oh wow, so that question has been, that's been asked a million different ways. And early on, my answer was that I wanted to go out to dinner. I love a really good restaurant, and like taking my time and savoring the time with my dinner companion at a really nice restaurant. And that is still like something that like I really, really miss. But what I really miss right now is my family. I have parents who are in the at-risk categories. I have in-laws who are in at-risk categories. I have nieces and nephews, and most of them I have, and they're all local. And most of them, I have not physically clapped eyes on them since January. We were together for my father's birthday. Then Kathleen and I were doing Seussical, and I was all tied up with that. And then there was we closed Seussical, and all of a sudden, boom, it's coronavirus. And I really haven't seen them. I've seen my parents by standing at the foot of their driveway, and it's probably about 40 or 50 feet long, and they will come out and stand on the porch, and I will talk to them. But I really haven't been to my folks' house to eat or to just hang out for a long time, or so really that's wearing very thin, and I cannot wait to sort of get back into that routine. My family's always been really kind of clannish. When I was young, we were always at my grandparents' house, my mom's parents' house, every Sunday afternoon. Up until this sort of happened, that was the case. We were all at my mom and dad's house. My brother, my sister, their significant others, all my nieces and nephews would be at my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. And so we had these big family meals and time to visit with everybody. And we just haven't been able to do that now in weeks, months. So I think it's 16 weeks at this point. That we're into this. So, so I can't wait for that to sort of.
I think one positive thing is that we appreciate the little things. We forget our life was so busy and we want this, but now all you wanted is to see somebody now. That's a big thing. I know.
Yeah. And it's just, and it just seems like, we all thought it'll be fine by Memorial Day, and then, oh no, it'll be fine by the 4th of July. And now it'll be fine by Labor Day. And realistically, I'm sort of steeling myself for it to be sometime next year. And it's just really hard to contemplate. It really, really is. So.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Well, we're so happy that you could come and join us today. This has been great fun.
Well, I am really, really glad that you asked, and really happy to spend some time with you guys. Larry, I was trying to remember what the first show we did together was.
Well,
was it Land of the Dead? William Shakespeare's Land of the Dead?
It's one of my favorite stories, because I've told it on in these videos that my character dies and I'm on the ground lying down waiting to jump up as a zombie, and I did the scene, and after the show, Beth, the stage manager, said, "You were so brave because you had a cockroach crawling over your body."
Oh,
if I'd known that cockroach was crawling over my body, I probably would have.
Would have an early resurrection for the zombies.
Oh my.
Kathleen, did he tell you about that? I mean, it's a story that's set at the opening of Henry V in the Globe Theater, and they think the plague is hit, but it's not really the plague, it's zombies. And it sounds like a horrible show, and it's actually so very good. And it was a ton of fun. We did it right at the height of sort of the popularity of AMC's The Walking Dead and some things like that. It was really a ton of fun to mount. So
I still
thank you guys.
I have a regret for that show. I did an ad lib line one night, and I as soon as I said it, I said, "That is so unprofessional." Todd Bucher was attacking me, and I had a chair between him and me, right? Todd was playing a zombie, and after I put the chair down, I said, "Down, boy, down." And it was just a stupid thing to say, So.
Well, you were in the moment.
You were in the moment.
I know.
Absolutely. Well, take care of yourself.
Thanks, you do. Yeah.
We need to get together when we can. And
yes, I can't wait.
I
can't wait. I'll see you at the theater again soon, as Lauren says. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.